So it is a very complex process where the culture is made to fit the needs of the members, and the members are uh, enabled to know the needs of the culture so that we can understand our own location in this complex world. Until unless a, we as teachers of English do not understand this particular aspect, why we are teaching English, what we will gain by teaching English, and as a students, until unless why are we learning English, what will we gain by learning English, we will not be able to learn English properly, and that is what is happening in India. You know, I tell you a very funny story. Somebody appeared for interview in my university long time back, and the person requested the interview committee to interview him in the regional language. They said, but it is no, here you are supposed to teach English. He said, please sir, give me the job, I will learn English. So even after doing PhD in English, the person does not know English. Why it happens so? There must be some serious problem in learning that language. And if he did not know language, how he passed out PhD? Why he did not fail at any level? Suppose I do not know French. How can I pass an examination in French? Until unless I know that language, I cannot pass the exam. But still, this is a wonderful achievement. Without knowing the language, he passed all the exams up to PhD. So, anyway, that is on the, let's say, totally different story. But as teachers and as learners, we should know these two things. And even this language learning or the spread of the language is not that simple. Okay, I go to the classroom and I start teaching how to speak in English, how to write English, and people will learn in a few months. I will make them all speak like English people. No. When we talk about the spread of language, learning of language, teaching of language, according to Saucer, there are two conflicting tendencies. What are these two conflicting tendencies? I will read one quotation from Saucer. When we understand these conflicting tendencies, we can very easily understand why and how we can learn English. The laws that govern the spread of linguistic phenomena are the same as those that govern any custom whatsoever that is fashion. So, just like there are some certain trends, certain rules, certain phenomena, certain laws that govern like a thing like fashion, just like fashions come and go. Same kind of formulas, same kind of laws govern the language learning process. In every human collectivity, two forces are always working simultaneously and in opposing directions. What are these two forces? Individualism or provincialism on the one hand, and intercourse, communication among men on the other hand. So these are the two forces. One, we need language for communication. Another thing, we are also concerned about preserving our native languages. So we do not want to be intruded by other language, but at the same time, sometimes we need this second language as well. So these are the two forces. So you can say kind of love-hate relationship. And as I told you, Due to this love-hate relationship and the political forces that work at the regional level, that work at the national level, and that work at the international level, cer- a certain language is promoted and canonized, and others are excluded. It can happen with English, it can happen with other languages as well. So, just like there may be one national language itself may try to exclude other regional languages that may be even better than the one adopted for the entire nation. In such cases, instead of facilitating communication, it limits the communication only to the privileged classes, which are always happy to have a language of their own. Now you can understand why they want regional languages for the common masses. Because once people learn English language, their connectivity with the international world is established. But there are people in the privileged positions. They want this kind of connectivity only for themselves. So they want to keep English as their own language. And this language is projected as a language of universal
அப்பா
significance
சார்ஜ் இருக்கு
and
தெளிவா தானே கேக்குறேன்,
knowledge,
தமிழ் தானே கேக்குறேன்.
enlightenment, science, and technology. Use of this language
புரியுங்க.
provides them a special place in society because the underprivileged classes who cannot understand or understand only partially as they do not as they are not given a proper opportunity to learn that language considers them highly enlightened. So, this is what happens. When most of the science, technology, philosophy, and knowledge is available in one particular language, and I suppose I do not have access to that language. Now I am bound to consider those people who know that language at a higher level because their level of knowledge is much higher than me. Those people may keep telling me that my language is good, but that is not going to help me. And that is a serious concern because as teachers who teach English language for you, me, like all of us, it is a serious concern because our job is to make English language the language of the masses. If we fail in that, our jobs will become redundant in the future. So to preserve our jobs, we have to work towards uh, the spread of English language. If we do not do that, then we are no more required in the academic spaces. While talking about the relationship between language and whether the society, whether that particular language serves the underprivileged or not, Kancha Ilaya says something. I will read one quotation from Kancha Ilaya. What difference did it make to us whether we had an English textbook that talks about Milton's Paradise Lost or Paradise Regained, or Shakespeare's Othello or Macbeth, or Wordsworth's poetry about nature in England, or a Telugu textbook which talks about Kalidasa's Meghdootam, or Bomar Bhagavatam, or Naina's or Tikkana's Mahabharatam, except the fact that one textbook is written in 26 letters and another is written in 56 letters. He problematizes the existence of or teaching of most of the languages because most of the languages do not include the experiences of the subaltern from the society. If people do not feel attachment with a particular language, the language will start decaying. He further says that we do not share the contents of either. We do not find our lives reflected in their narratives. We cannot locate our settings in them. None of these issues.
देखिए मैडम, मेरे एक्सेल शीट में तो 31 डेज का ये कंप्लीट मंथ का है।
वनिता का यहाँ पे मैंने वर्किंग डे नहीं मेंशन किया है, लेकिन नॉलेज भी नहीं है इनको। दिसंबर का एक लीव था, वो सीएम में एडजस्ट हो गया है वनिता का।
नहीं, पहला मैं वो दीपक सर का दिख रहा हूँ, बाद में वनिता का दिखते हैं। उनका पहला दिसंबर का
वर्किंग डे कितना दीपक का
मैं बताऊँ क्या एक्सेल शीट देख के 31 है उनका टोटल वर्किंग डेज कंप्लीट मंथ काम किया और 5 to 2 इलेक्ट्रिसिटी डायरेक्शन। अभी मुझे ईआरपी में नहीं चेक
और मैंने भी यहाँ पे 1 लिखा है, वो पीएल में से
एडजस्ट किया है ना। करेक्ट,
13 को छुट्टी लिया है उन्होंने।
करेक्ट, एक सीएल में से एडजस्ट किया।
वनिता का भी 13 था, वो सीएल में से एडजस्ट किया है।
बिल्कुल भूल गया नहीं जा रहे तो आपको ले गए थे प्रोफेशनल सिंह वाला प्रोसेस नहीं हो रहा था ना। कल हमने भेज दिया है, आपको साइन बची है, मैंने कल को भेज दिया। दिसंबर
So, dear friends, I stopped for some time because of some disturbance. Uh, I understand some of you may be having some important business to discuss, but that you can do by muting yourself. You mute yourself and please.
Sir, sorry for the interruption, sir, from the host side.
Yeah, please, ma'am.
Sorry for the
I
interruption.
know
Sorry for the interruption.
some
We are
of us
checking
can be having some serious business to discuss, but we can mute ourselves when we are talking.
Yes, sir. 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 Sorry for the interruption. Interruption, sir. Proceed. Sorry for the interruption, sir. Proceed, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So, when we look at how English language is taught in India, it reflects the same apprehension which is expressed by Kancha Ilaiah. There is no connection between the language taught in the classroom and the language used in the outside society. So, whatever is taught in the classroom is of no use for the learner when he or she goes outside. So, one thing is if we want to make English language more significant, more widespread, then we have to revise our syllabi in such a manner that they should reflect the, the local life, the immediate life of the learner, so that they can feel the connection and they can learn English language in a better manner. Otherwise, what happens? They learn English up to graduation level, post graduation level, and even PhD level, but they fail to find words that are familiar to them. In this era of globalization, most of the universities and other educational institutes teach English in the name of communication skills. This language policy at one level projects that English is the only medium of communication in India. On another level, the pedagogy adopted for teaching of English teach words, phrases, and structures which never become a medium of sentiments and feeling. The learners, though, speak in English, but they can be happy, they can be sad, they can be angry, nervous, and frustrated only in their mother tongues. It is so because the linguistic methods teach strings of words that form well worn patterns, causing their users to think in certain manners, certain ways, starting with words like a word is likelier to produce abstract thinking, which is likened to Invasion of One's Mind by George Orwell, when he says, this invasion of one's mind by ready made phrases anesthetizes a portion of one's brain. So the language which is taught in the classroom does not activate the thinking process. Rather, as it is made up of ready-made phrases, ready-made ideas, and those ready-made phrases and ideas does not have any connection with the immediate life, does not activate the thinking process in the mind of the learner. This detachment of language from the observable reality makes it possible when we talk about the capitalist world for the capitalist powers, which are transformations of monarchy and feudalism, to maintain orthodoxy among their subjects, who also acts as active carriers of their ideology, and in this way dupe those whom they wish to enslave. So the language, instead of fighting against the process of enslavement, becomes a tool to enslave people. If a language is taught in a way that prevents concrete mental pictures from being called out, people will not understand what is happening to them, and they cannot rebel against what they do not understand. The entire apparatus of teaching communicative skills is producing the English speaking parrots in a way who speak it the whole day but fail to express themselves. Now the question arises, is the ability of speaking in English be considered an extra qualification for a parrot or not? Undoubtedly, it is a qualification from the point of view of the domesticator. But from the point of view of the parrot, suppose I am the parrot who is speaking English, it's an extra burden until unless it leads to clear thinking by bringing in mental images, visualizing things, and then finding words to describe them. Until unless I can use the language to my advantage, it is a burden on me. But the way we teach English in the classrooms, it becomes a burden. That's why our learners always lag in learning English language. The ELT policymakers do not seem to understand this fact. In this regard, Philipson says, what Philipson says? The ELT policymakers themselves, in center and periphery, in ministries of education, universities, curriculum development centers, and the like, are part of a hegemonic structure. The structure of academic imperialism. He uses the word academic imperialism. So the structure of academic imperialism has ensured that center training and expertise have been disseminated worldwide with change and innovative professionalism tending to be generated by the center. So the language policy is created in such a manner that the center holds the power. Therefore, the language becomes a tool to colonize the mental landscape of people. There is a one more function of the language, that is, if the people can use the language to their advantage, they can fight against this colonization of the mental landscape. But that is possible only when they understand the language. The process of globalization that rests more on the needs of the capitalist powers than the common people has been turning its subjects into refugees by uprooting them from their native places and transplanting them temporarily in the alien lands, not only in the alien lands, in the alien languages as well. In this regard, P. Sainath considers globalization that is propelled by market forces a destroyer of human lives when he says, market fundamentalism destroys more human lives than any other simply because it cuts across all national, cultural, geographic, religious, and other boundaries. It is as much at home in Moscow as in Mumbai. It sits as easily in Hindu, Islamic, or Christian societies, and it contributes angry, despairing recruits to the armies of all religious fundamentalism, based on the premise that the market is the solution to all the problems of the human race. It is too it is to a very religious fundamentalism. It has its own gospel, gospel of saint growth and saint choice. So this market fundamentalism has affected human lives along with the language and has rendered the concept of mother tongue invalid. Now everybody is in the market and moving from place to place like a commodity. Neither they have a motherland nor they have a mother tongue. Therefore, much of the world's verbal communication takes place by means of languages which are not the user's mother tongue, but their second language or third language or fourth language, acquired one, one way or the another way, and used when appropriate. And this detachment between the thinking process and the language renders the thinking process redundant. So we are getting a new breed of human beings who are non-thinking subjects. We are supposed to be thinking and conscious subjects, not objects. But instead of becoming the thinking subjects, they become unthinking subjects, where their thinking process is completely under the control of capitalist forces. When we discuss the relationship between language teaching and the capitalist forces, so this study of the relationship between discourses, institutions, and power has four important points. How we can do the research in this direction to find out, to conduct the study. First point is the study of how members of oppressed group can discursively penetrate the institutionalized form of their oppression. As we all are teaching in the colleges, schools, universities, and the person who comes to us, a student, already belongs to the oppressed group. So how the members of oppressed groups can discursively penetrate the institutionalized form of their oppression. Point number two, how subordinate individuals discursively frame their own subordination. thereby perpetuating it. Third, analysis of how dominant groups discursively construct and reproduce their own positions of dominance. So, these are the 3 points discussed by Van Dijk in 1993. And out of these three, this is the third area that we should take up as focus because it's one of the most though all the three are important. So the first one is how, as a as an oppressed subject, through language I can penetrate the institutionalized form of oppression, and I must also know how the dominant groups discursively construct and reproduce their own position and dominance. If the language is taught as a tool which is used against people and which people can also use to their advantage, I'm sure our students will learn English in a much better way. They not only English, they will learn all languages in a much better way. While talking about this relationship of post-industrial capitalism and languages or language and literature teaching, Fairclough defines or uses a term new capitalism for the post-industrial capitalism as the most recent of a historical series of radical restructurings through which capitalism has maintained its fundamental continuity. These restructurings involve dramatic transformations not only of economic but also political and social domains. And all this is made possible by making changes in the languages. For example, in the area of education, there has been a tendency to run universities increasingly like commercial businesses, with students being their customers. So now they have started using the terms like students are customers. It seems very nice. You get the rights of a customer, but then you have to make the payment also. This development in turn has been promoted by the government's pro-managerial educational discourses and policies, which espouse an entrepreneurial culture and educational system. The reason why language plays such a significant role in the new capitalism is because of it being knowledge driven. The language is knowledge driven. Language is not simple. I'm talking to you and you are listening to me and you are talking to me and I am listening to you the whole day. The language is a bundle of knowledge. Whatever you tell me, you are transferring knowledge to me. Whatever I am telling you, I am transferring knowledge to you. Knowledge or anti knowledge. Sometimes, whatever I am transferring you goes against the very ideas of knowledge. So you can say, just like, there is a matter and then there is a black hole. Black hole is a place where we don't know what happens. So, there is knowledge or there is something, lots of misinformation is also there. So whether information or misinformation, sometimes I say we live in the age of information, we live in the age of misinformation. So this knowledge, but in a proper way, we talk about knowledge and how people are to act in this world, that is in the workspace. For this, it has to rely on language and discourse. Discourse that is endowed with performative powers to bring into being the very realities it claims to describe. Institutions play a very vital role in this as they are primary sites of reality construction. So institutions, whether it's our college, it's our school, it's our university, or it's a ministry, or any other institution. So these institutions are the sites where reality is constructed. The questions we might ask ourselves are how does this discourse materialize in organizations and institutions? How is it internalized in social practices and how does it define the identities of people? So, linguistic and sociological approaches to the study of institutions and their discourses generally regard language as constitutive of institutions. Therefore, language is the principal means by which institutions create a coherent social reality that frames their sense of who they are. So, how do I know that who am I? This is created by the frameworks generated by the institutions. Therefore, institutions, their employees, and others with whom they interact, that is public, are being constructed and reconstructed in discourse in discursive practices. This view of discourse as constituting social reality does not necessarily lead to the view that discourse is all there is, but assigns discourse an important role in shaping reality, creating patterns of understanding, which people then apply in social practice. Just a minute, I got a call. Hello, hello, yes, हाँ भिजवा दीजिए सर मैं ठीक है सर मैं आप नंबर मुझे एक बार भेज दीजिए व्हाट्सएप पे मैं ठीक है हाँ मैं घर पे ही हूँ आप भेज दीजिए हाँ मैं अभी डाल देता हूँ अभी मेरी मीटिंग में बैठा हूँ ऑनलाइन तो मीटिंग के खत्म होते ही मैं आपको पैसा भेज दूंगा sorry friends, there was some interruption. Extremely sorry for, and I could not unmute also. So, yeah, for example, in these new capitalist societies, it is the interest of management to articulate a social reality for employees, which emphasizes supposedly egalitarian workplace practices. Now, what kind of language they use in the corporate world? If you work in the corporate world, you will find the terminologies like teamwork. Even in the university spaces, we are talking like about the teamwork. What is the meaning of teamwork? Suppose you work in a private company. Teamwork is okay, but it is only about the work. Is it about the share also? A big company is not a product of only one man. It is a product of thousands of people working in the company. But the profit goes only to one man. Then what is the teamwork? So work, when it comes to work, it is the teamwork. But when it comes to making money, it's only a handful of people. But these phrases like teamwork, in which employees take ownership, the employees themselves take the burden. So the idea of ownership they take, while at the same time securing commitment from them and being able to realize their institutional goals. Habermas has made an important contribution to the study of institutional discourses. He distinguishes between communicative uses of language. So, what are the communicative uses of language? While talking about the communicative uses of language, So communicative uses of language aimed at producing understanding. So communicative use of language means it produces understanding. Then what is the second use? Second use is the strategic use. So what is the strategic use? Strategic use of the language is oriented to success and making people do things. So with the help of strategic use of the language, we achieve success and we make people do things for us. This is how the corporate world uses language. So the strategic use of language is persuasive in a way. Like there are advertisements. After watching advertisement, you buy certain products. Sometimes you don't need that product, but still you buy it. Sometimes the product is not that good that you discover only after buying it, but still you are persuaded to buy it. And you are persuaded to think in a particular manner, you are persuaded to act in a particular manner, you are persuaded to behave in a particular manner, you are persuaded to love people, you are persuaded to hate people, and all these things happen because of the strategic use of the language. Habermas sees this development, that is, the development means displacement of the former by the later. So slowly, the communicative use of language is disappearing between the institution and masses, and only the strategic use is coming up. Habermas sees this development as a sign of the colonization of people's lives by the system of the economy and the state. In this way, economic models and discourses have colonized the institutional forms of what Habermas calls the life world, such as education or interpersonal relations. However, this distinction between the life world, that is ordinary conversation, informality, and the system, that is institutions, the state, formality, can no longer be upheld as both spheres now colonize each other and share common discursive practices. For example, if you remember uh, 20 years, 30 years back, when you watched the news on TV channel, what was the purpose? You watched the news to get some information, and of course, they were providing you information. Now, you watch the news channel to get information, but you are not getting the information. You are co opted into a bigger agenda unknowingly. After watching the news, either you hate somebody or you love somebody, your mindset is transformed. You think you are getting information, but you are not getting information. Rather, you are persuaded to think in a particular manner. Some 40 years back, when you get a news, the anchor, the news reader will be neutral. The news reader's point of view will not be there. Whatever is the news reader will tell you. Now the news reader is not telling you the news, rather the news reader is trying to persuade you to his or her point of view. So this is how both the spheres are interpenetrated and you don't know where it is information and where it is misinformation. This can be observed in the process of conversationalization, the modeling of formal written and spoken public discourse or informal face-to-face talk in the bureaucratic field, where institutions in the public and private domain nowadays often rely on promotional discourses reminiscent of the advertising to commodify their services and to attract the wide range of people. Now you see, if you watch the news in 2023, I'm sure you will find that they are not providing you information. Rather, they are advertising a particular point of view, and knowingly or unknowingly, we are persuaded to follow that point of view. So, while institutional discourses and power has been studied in terms of Habermas, the notion of colonization of a natural, unspoiled life world by rational, instrumental social system expressed in bureaucratic administrative discourses. Other studies have pointed to the productiveness of institutional discourses. And this point was also explored by Giddens in his theory of structuration. Giddens argues that social actors are not completely overwhelmed by institutional powers and dominance, and that institutions have a potential for domination as well as emancipation. For instance, new workplace practices, that is teamwork. Now, as a teacher of English, when I teach English, I must acquaint my students, and you also must acquaint your students with the subtle politics inherent in the ready-made phrases like teamwork. If we do not understand the subtle politics ingrained in the ready-made phrases, then we are becoming tools of enslaving masses being already enslaved by the language. So, my idea is we should be conscious teachers, not unconscious tools in the hands of a big machine. So, for instance, new workplace practices like teamwork, which favor a more egalitarian relationship between the management and the workforce, are often said to give workers more space to exercise their abilities and to fulfill themselves. In this way, workplaces would be enabling as well as constraining. However, while this may apply to institutional locations where domination of one group over the other is partial and contested, such as management and show floor, in some coercive institutions such as prison, power relations are very real and cannot be ignored. The social aspect of language is emphasized by the second, the so-called fundamentalist paradigm, which states that discourse is language in use and should be studied by the lead given by Brown and Yule. What Brown and Yule says about this idea of discourse is language in use. The analysis of discourse is necessarily the analysis of language in use. As such, it cannot be restricted to the description of linguistic forms independent of the purpose or function which these forms are designed to serve in human affairs. This idea of language as action and social behavior is emphasized in CDA, critical discourse analysis. So, as teachers of language, teach does not mean that we simply teach them language. And because we all are not in the schools, primary schools, we are in the colleges and universities. Unfortunately, even in the BA programs, we are teaching them the same grammar, same comprehension, same essay writing, same articles, same syllabus that they have already studied up to 10th. That is a very unfortunate situation. According to me, at graduation and post graduation level, Our emphasis should be on critical discourse analysis. How do we understand the discourse? If our student does not understand critical discourse analysis, means if they do not understand the language critically, we should we should means suppose that they already know the language because they studied English up to 10th class. So even and then plus one plus two again English. Now when they come to the graduation, if we are teaching them the same thing that they have already studied up to 10th class, then it is a wastage of time. So what should we teach them? We should teach them how to understand language because they have already learned the language. This critical discourse analysis sees discourse, the use of language in speech and writing, as a form of social practice. It is this definition of discourse as a social practice that is the most useful for our analysis of institutional discourses, as it implies a two-way relationship between a discursive event and the situation, institution, and social structure in which it occurs. Discourse is shaped by these, but it also shapes them. By discourse, Foucault means a group of statements which provide a language for talking about a way of representing the knowledge about a particular topic at a particular historical moment. So the discourse, according to Foucault, constructs the topic. It governs the way a topic can be meaningfully talked about. It also influences how ideas are put into practice and used to regulate the conduct of others. If our students understand how the language is used to regulate the conduct of others, means they understand how to analyze the language critically. They understand how to analyze a poem critically, not accepting the intended meaning or the meaning which is already given to them by some guide writer. That is the success for us as teachers. And if they do not understand it, that is a failure. That is our failure as teachers. So then what is this CDA? According to Van Jit, critical discourse analysis is a theory and method analyzing the way that individuals and institutions use language. Critical discourse analysis focuses on the relations between discourse, power, dominance, and social inequality. Because of their concern with the analysis of the often opaque relationships between discourse, practices, and wider social and cultural structures, critical discourse analysis practitioners take an explicit socio-political stance. In this respect, critical discourse analysis is different from the other main and more descriptive approaches to institutional discourses or pure conversational analysis. So, in another 5 minutes or so, I will finish my talk, and then I will take the questions and any doubts if there are. So, when we talk about teaching languages and literature in the age of post-industrial capitalism, and when we talk about the recent developments, what are the recent developments? What are the recent things that we should incorporate while teaching English language? Then we should include, first we should understand The insights provided by all the big scholars from Michel Foucault to Antonio Gramsci to Michel Foucault to our own context, even B.R. Ambedkar and Bhagat Singh and many other scholars. How the language becomes a tool of colonization as well as a decolonization. And once we know that language is not simply a skill, language is a tool that is required to do certain specific tasks in a given situation. We will be able to teach English language or any language much more easily, and our students will be able to understand the language in a much better way, and they will not feel the burden, because now the language is imposed on them. They do not know what they will do. If you ask any student of graduation, simple question, why are you learning English? Some days, most of them, they do not know why they are learning English. Okay, the girls do have in English because they can get married easily. Boys are learning English because they want to impress the girls with a little bit of this word, that word. What is, why they are learning a language at all? The real purpose behind learning language at graduation and post-graduation level is to understand the power of language, is to learn, is to get the power to analyze the discourse. Because when we are in graduation and post-graduation level and beyond that, we are not simple learners of the language. Rather, we understand as many as possible dimensions of the language, how the language functions in a given situation, in a given community. And if we do not know, then it is our failure as learners and it is our failure as teachers. With these words, I would like to end my session. And if you have any question or any doubt, you can unmute and you can ask. There are a few questions, in the how can we teach literature to today's students who are so obsessed with SMS language? Uh, See, this question is coming from KG Veena. So, Veena ji, one thing is we should not be afraid of the language of SMS and all that. We should use all these things to our advantage. The world is changing and the world will change further. If we stick to the same old way of teaching literature, I don't think that we will be able to sustain in the academic spaces for long. Because in the coming 20 years, my apprehension is most of the things will be happening in the digital spaces. The library will be digital, text will be digital, and all these things are going to come. So if we do not learn new things, if we do not understand the new kind of languages that are coming up before us, uh, then we are only teachers and we are not learners. The key to be a good teacher is to be a good learner. So we have to be good learners all our lives, and a good learner is not afraid to learn anything. So this is the only thing I have to say to your question. Uh, how can we teach people who have language biases in their mind? If people have language bias, see, we cannot teach anybody anything. People can people can learn more easily than we can teach them. So if somebody comes with a bias, it's very difficult because the first problem is to struggle with the biased mindset. But as far as I am concerned, we should be open to learning all the languages, but that I can say only about myself, not about anybody else. So, does the policy of multilingualism in curriculum affect the attention? Uh, in a country like India, where we have so many languages, uh, we are basically multilinguals. Everybody knows one, two, three languages. Here, the problem is not multilingualism. The problem is we are only the users of languages. We do not understand the languages. Whether we are using Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Hindi, English, whichever language we use, the problem is we do not understand the subtle politics inherent in the language, how the language is coded, we are not able to decode it. Means our graduation and post graduation student is not better than our metric student. They are at the same level. This is a very unfortunate situation. Whether we know one language or we know many languages, that is not a problem. The problem is we do not understand the politics inherent in the language or the language itself, how the language works. We do not know it. I think I am able to answer your question. How do you look upon people who make attempts to learn English through translation method? See, if people want to learn English through translation method, there is hardly any problem. People can learn, and they can choose any methodology to learn language. So earlier, when people use the translation method to learn English, even then they could become very good writers. And not everybody who learns language as their first language becomes very good at language. The most important thing is how much we try to learn about the language, how much we learn about the functioning of the language. Hmm, Dr. Priya says, unfortunately, language is burdened by so many imperialistic structures. If you are talking about English, yes, English has imperialistic structures undoubtedly, but which language in this world does not have imperialistic structures? Every language has the tendency to colonize human beings. It is the responsibility of the human beings to try to get out of the colonizing tendencies of the language. So it is our responsibility to know how the language tries to colonize us, and if we do not understand it, we will be colonized. There are set phrases even in Tamil, even in Telugu, even in Hindi, even in Malayalam. So if people have imbibed those expressions, their minds are colonized. They act like an anesthesia. So we should know how to get out of the anesthetic effect of the language. That is possible only if we understand the language, how the language works. Uh, any other question? I think some of you are trying to speak but are not audible to me. You can type the question in the chat box. What techniques can be used to teach critical discourse analysis to undergraduate students who are not comfortable or familiar with correct usage of English in daily discourse? Yeah, it's a serious problem. Amandeep Kaurji. When a student comes to graduation level after learning English for 12 years and does not know English, it's very difficult to teach that student uh, critical discourse analysis, because the first requirement for critical discourse analysis if we are English, teachers of English language, that the students should know English language. And if they do not know, if that is a big problem. And I'm very sure we cannot teach them English language at graduation level if they do not know English language up to +2 level. If they have already spent 12 years learning one particular language and they have failed to learn that language, it is beyond our power to teach them that language. Of course, if they are interested, they can still learn, but that depends on their interest, not on our interest. I just like to give you one example. Sometimes my university runs English proficiency course. So once they asked me to take 2 classes, and I asked my students, in the class of maybe 50 students, more than 10, 15 were already MA in English. So if somebody comes to English proficiency class after getting MA in English degree, so how can we help such a person? So it's a very difficult situation, and even I don't know how to deal with it. A few years, 2, 3 years back, one student in my university joined my course and said, "Sir, my English is not good. What shall I do?" The first thing that came to my mind, if your English is not good, how you got admission in where the competition is so tough? For our 80 seats, there are 5,000 students. And I was surprised how that student got admission. Due to this multiple choice question, that student might have got admission. But uh, it's a difficult situation when our student at graduation and post-graduation level does not know the basics of the language. So, any other question, any other doubt? I think Amandeep Kaurji, I could answer your question. So,
Participants can post your questions in the chat box if you have any more questions to be asked. So thank you, sir. Certain unutterable fulfillment of occasions can only be articulated by inaudible language of heart. I feel humbled and honored to propose the vote of thanks. I, on behalf of the Department of English Aided, extend my sincere thanks to the guest speaker, Dr. Jay Singh sir, for accepting our invitation and gracing today's session by sharing his knowledge on language. And you have brought to light the idea that language stored in classroom does not activate the thinking process, where the ready-made phrases it hinder the creative thinking of the students. Additionally, the construction of dominance by prominent group language, difference between information versus direction, and the critical analysis discourse. These ideas have really thought provoking and have resulted in a great enriched gain knowledge. Thank you so much, sir. I express my deep sense of gratitude to the head of the department, Dr. P. Ilamaran, sir, for his warm support and guidance towards this program. Thank you, sir. I mentioned my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. M.S. Sarita Madam, T.M. Nitya Gautami Madam for their support in today's session. Thank you. I extend my thanks to the faculty members of Department of English Aided for their constant direction and support. I thank each participant for their active participation towards today's session. Thank you all. The participants shall fill in the feedback form. The link is posted in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks to PSD College and thanks to all of the